All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Serious Angler podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and joined with me is the captain, Mr. Andy Full. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, just been slaying smallies for the last couple days. Hands hurt again. I feel like every time I get the cracked parts of like my knuckles gone from catching so many fish and handling so many fish that they just instantly go back to bleed mode like 4 days later. So it's painful.
Well, when you get off Lake Erie and your hands don't hurt, there's probably an issue.
Yeah, that was probably a bad day. And where I'm at on Lake Erie is if we get less than 10 bites a day, that's a really bad day. So, and today we had a very good day. So it's been a lot of fun. Put some, I don't even know. I want to say we put probably 25 bass over 4 pounds in the boat today, and a couple over 5, one very close to 6. Post spawn fish, spawners. Well, we weren't catching actively any spawners, but some pre-spawn, post-spawn mix. They're coming and going, which is really cool.
Well, so you got a whole mix. You got them at every stage right now.
Yeah, yep.
That's cool.
The next 6 weeks, 5 weeks is going to be really fun.
Well, the whole 20 over 4 pounds deal and a couple over 6 and everything sounds pretty similar to the experience that our guests had today.
Yeah.
Not up north, but down in Texas for some big old largemouth, and caught himself a century belt, which is pretty badass. And I'm like, it seems like when you go to Lake Fork and you see, the whole top 5 basically all have 100 pounds. It's like, dang, Lake Fork just shows out. But really, I don't think people realize how hard that is. Consistently do that over 4 days with changing weather conditions is absolutely insane. And I'm really excited to talk about it with him when we get him on here in a second.
Absolutely. The way I think about it is like you hear of the insane amount of pressure that like a Chick gets or a Gunnersville or any of the TVA lakes. And then you take Fork, which is like an eighth or a quarter of the size of most of those lakes. And it gets just as many boats on it. And it has way more trees and dangerous situations for people to be driving around, with it also being what I think like 4.5 feet low or 5 feet low.
I think it was 6. I think Shane will have to confirm it for us here, but that's one thing. Our guest today, Mr. Shane LeHew, Bassmaster Elite Series Pro, we're getting on here in a second. I'm really intrigued to talk to him about like practice strategy because, Lake Fork, I haven't been there only a few days, but like in my few days there, like Lake Fork's this massive lake in terms of like what the outsiders view it as, right? This big Texas lake. But when you're on it, like it doesn't feel that big. It really doesn't feel like it. Especially now that the water's down. I mean, I'm just intrigued to see what kind of practice strategies were, implicated here to try to give yourself an edge, if any. But it's, I'm intrigued to talk about that. But real quick, Andy, to kind of give the folks an update, and I have a big thank you to folks that showed out for support for the episode of Chasing Hardware from Lake Eufaula. That video kind of blew up a little bit, and appreciate the folks that went over and engaged with that. But the next episodes of Chasing Hardware will be next week as I head to Lake Chickamauga for the next Hobie BOS. So that'll be fun. We're talking about pressure lakes, and like we spoke offline with Shane here a little bit, and the Lake Chickamauga is definitely one of them because they were just there, and it's just absolutely insane how many boats that place sees on the daily. Like you go on a Tuesday morning, you think you'll have a lot of stuff to yourself, and good luck. It's absurd. But Andy, I think without further ado, let's get our guest down here today, Mr. Shane LeHew. What's going on, sir?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome.
Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, this is the first time Shane has been on, right? Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of sharing the boat with Shane back in January down in Florida, where it was supposed to be nice and sunny, but we were greeted with, it was 28 degrees the first day?
Yep, I think it was in the 30s like 2 or 3 days while we were down there. Not Florida-esque at all.
No, we were down there for a Berkeley trip trying to feature the new power bait jigs, and I remember hearing from the guys that like, yeah, it's kind of tough up shallow right now, and then we get a text, hey, Shane's got 30 pounds right now, and lo and behold, finds him offshore, pretty similar to how you caught him this past week. But But dude, before we get too deep into the show here, obviously it's your first time, and the first time on the podcast, we want to kind of know how this all started for you. Like, take us back to the first bass you caught and who got you into fishing in the first place.
It's got to be my dad. I actually grew up on the Mississippi River near Davenport, Iowa. So I was young, very, very young. My dad fished a lot of John Deere Tuesday nighters, and finally his buddy, I can't remember how old I was. It had to be 8, 10 years old. His buddy had to work late, couldn't make it. And my dad's like, "Well, you want to fish a tournament?" And I'm like, "Heck yeah, I want to fish." I caught one fish that night. That's the only bite we had, and I won big fish. And ever since then, I was hooked. Caught one fish on a frog.
Perfect.
It was
told
terrible
your dad to
back
cough
then.
off the money, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I can go buy some Skittles at 8 years old. Maybe some Spider-Man or Batman stuff.
Yeah. So John Deere, what was that all about? Like, what was
I don't know. It was called the
partnership?
John Deere Tuesday Nighter. I mean, it was probably $25 tournament. Bunch of guys get off of work and go fish on the river. I think it was maybe pool 9 on the river.
Do you happen to remember what your big fish was?
I think it was like a 3-pounder, which is back then was pretty big for the river.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you're probably pretty excited to kind of go back to your roots at the end of the season, though.
Yeah, I mean, I am. I haven't spent a lot of time up there like I used to, but we used to go about once every year, at least go back up there. I mean, because now it's 16 and a half hours from my house in North Carolina. So it's a long haul to go up there and just kind of deal with that. I did go for the FLW tour a couple years ago, and it was pretty good. It wasn't bad. It wasn't quite like I remembered it, but it was also cold, that event as well. So it was a little bit different, but that's really where I got my start was, fishing with my dad, little small tournaments. And then I fished the junior stuff. I won the junior national championship when I was, I want to say 17, 18 in 2007, right before I went to college. And then I fished in college for UNC Charlotte. I fished some BFLs, of course, growing up. Fished a little bit as a co-angler on the FLW tour, and that's probably where I learned the most. I got to fish with guys like Brent Ayler, quite a few other guys, Luke Clausen, and I got to know Brian Thrift. I fished with him a lot, so I've been around a lot of good guys. I fished with Hank Cherry before Hank made his big moves on the Elite Series growing up or starting to fish here in North Carolina. So North Carolina was very good to me as far as progressing my career, because I'm against, even in BFLs, it's almost like fishing a major tour event, because there's a lot of guys around me that can make it very easily.
Yeah, that area you're in is absolutely stacked.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of fishermen that have made it, and then there's a lot of fishermen that have made it and come and gone, but there's a ton that could make it that nobody has any idea who they are.
Yeah, I'd give an argument that it's probably one of the most stacked talent-wise for, bass fishing competition in the country. Yeah. I probably feel more comfortable going to Texas or Tennessee to fish against those locals than North Carolina. I think for the prime reason of, like, you have a lot of diverse fisheries, but you have unique fisheries, though, that the rest of the country doesn't have with those herring chasers. Yeah.
Yeah. And Norman's probably going to get like that. It doesn't have a ton of herring in it and never really has, and now it's got some in it.
How did that happen? Like, is that not supposed to happen? Or
I think it was striper fishermen buying herring for catching stripers, and then, at the end of the day, what are you going to do with them? You're going to dump them in the lake.
Oh, man. So is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
It hasn't really changed the lake a whole lot. I've seen more of them actually up in the river, and the river is very shallow, which is not typical of a herring.
They're confused.
Yeah, I am starting to see some on the lower end. So it's going to be a different lake.
Well, that'll be interesting to keep up with. Yeah, see how that changes. Because we work with the boys over at Queen Tackle, which, obviously KJ being on the Elites and working with Jeff. So obviously Norman's their backyard, so that's gonna be interesting. I'll have to shoot Jeff a text. I was actually talking to him this morning to see if he's noticed that as well with the herring.
Yeah.
Get his take if he likes it or not.
He's pretty much my neighbor. He lives about 5 minutes from me.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So dude, let's start breaking into to Lake Fork here. Obviously, big congratulations on the Century belt. That's a big kudos to the career and a stamp on the resume.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I knew I needed around 28 pounds, and I caught that big one, and I was sitting there trying to do the math in my head while trying to still fish and win a tournament. But I mean, every angler wants to catch 100 pounds, so I'm sitting here fishing and trying to do math in my head. I'm like, man, I'm not that bright. This is pretty hard to do. Because I couldn't even remember, like, the first day. I'm like, how many ounces did I have the first day? I don't remember all that. I just go fishing. Like, I don't really focus on where I'm at in the standings and, oh, this is what I need to win. And I just go out and catch whatever I can catch, and that's what it's going to be. But once you get close to catching 100 pounds, you start thinking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then
it's like having like 29-13. Like you just want to just surpass that 30 mark. Exactly.
And finally, my cameraman, he chimed in. He's like, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but you need 5 ounces. I was like, oh gosh. Like, then I started fishing real hard. I was like, well, luckily hilarious. I caught one about 5 minutes later.
Broke that was awesome. We saw a few guys like go through that, like was like on the cusp of it. Like I think Swindle lost one that like would have gotten him there.
He was like 99-15.
Yeah, he literally was an ounce away. Yeah. Listen to that commentary on live was hilarious. Just like probably not hilarious for him, but like for me, it's like, are you kidding me? This is how it's gonna go down. Like
it's like paraphrasing. He was like, "Oh, that's got to be 100." The official judge, he goes, "I got you at 99-15," and he just like looked at him. He's like,
he's probably thinking, "You couldn't give me one more ounce."
Yeah.
I talked to him about it because everybody told me they're like, "Oh, Swindle beat you in the last 10 minutes or whatever." And I was like, "Oh, that's I figured it was going to happen because I didn't catch any the last 30-45 minutes of the tournament." And then I was talking to Swindle. He said, "Yeah, I had 99-15 before I caught that fish." And I was like, "Well, now I'm glad you beat me because that would have been miserable to live the rest of your life knowing you caught 99-15."
You're that guy.
That guy.
But it was his second time catching 100 pounds. So
yeah, but like still, regardless of it's your 10th time or your 100th time, like 99-15 is annoying beyond all belief.
It would have hurt just as bad. I would have felt bad for him.
Yeah. Well, dude, there was a point in the day. Obviously, we're gonna get through. Like, we're gonna talk about the whole event here, but it was like probably 11 o'clock our time where you were like, I think you were in second place. Like Lee and Brandon were leaving the doors wide open. Like I was talking to our boys over at Johnson Outdoors. I was like, hey, if Lee and BP don't get their stuff together, like old Shane's gonna sneak in this thing. Like, because you had a sack by like noon, I think Central Time. So like, they didn't have much to write home about. I was like, there's an opportunity. I thought for a second that you had a shot, but what was going through your head throughout that last day?
Well, I mean, realistically, I didn't think I had much of a chance at all, especially with the bag that I had, 27 pound, or I had 26.11, I think at noon or something like that, 26 something. And I figured I needed 40 pounds to beat Lee because he's going to go out, which he eventually did. And then I got back to the dock and everybody was like, man, you were only a couple pounds off the lead. I was like, what? I was like, how's that even possible? I mean, I started the day 15 pounds behind. Everybody was like, Lee had like nothing. Him or Polnick. And I was kind of shocked by that, but I figured maybe it had something to do with the weather, the clouds and everything like that. Because that kind of killed my topwater bite. So it did change the lake a little bit. But yeah, once I got in and people started telling me that, and then they were like, but Lee caught 2 big ones at the end. I was like, well, good. At least it wasn't like I lost by 3 pounds.
Yeah.
And I only needed 1 more fish. I said I would rather it be that I got blown out than lost by 3 pounds and had a day like that.
Yeah, I think he caught like an 8-pounder and like one of his last casts or something like that.
Yeah. 8.5 pounder, I think.
Yeah. Not sure he really needed it, but going back real fast. So you mentioned, because the thing that stuck out to me the most was that last day in terms of like the lack of sun. And you just mentioned that your topwater bite died on the last day.
Yeah.
So most people attribute like the overcast to like say, hey, that's a topwater day. But you're saying that's what killed it. So kind of dive into that.
Lake Fork is, you hear all these things about how good it is, and it is very good, but it is a very, very weird lake. It is its own fishery. The fish do some weird things throughout the day. They change a lot throughout the day. Shad spawn deal, some days, like when it was sunny, it was all day long the first 2 days of the tournament.
Wow.
I caught them on a cane walker and a square bill pretty much the whole day. I never had to put either. I could move. The first day of the tournament, I think I burnt 15 to 20 gallons of gas on that little lake. But that's just because I would run 4 miles one way, 4 miles the other, 3 miles this way, 3 miles across. I was just bouncing around so fast because it was so good. I just knew they would get used to like seeing my topwater. So I could make a couple casts up there, catch a couple fish, first 2 or 3 casts. Then I'd have to move. Then I could come back to that place later and catch them again. But then those cloudy days, I would have one chance. So whatever point I picked in the morning, that was pretty much the only topwater bites I was going to get. And it was really weird. You would think with the cloud cover, they would bite it all day. It was the exact opposite. They bit it when it was sunny all day, and they would not touch it after that first initial shad spawn deal. I had about 15 minutes to do it. So whatever point I pulled up on the 3rd or 4th day, that's where I was going to get my topwater bite, and then I'd have to go dragging around the power worm and stuff like that. And the 3rd and 4th day, the fish were actually smaller for whatever reason on the top. I caught no small ones the first 2 days on it. And I would get 5 to 6 bites on it all day long the 3rd and 4th day because I had to try it because everything I caught pretty much was 3.5 to 6.5 pounds the first 2 days. So I had to keep it honest, and I don't think I caught a fish bigger than 2.5 pounds the 3rd or 4th day on it.
That's so a big
I don't know if that cloud cover does something to the shad in specific because I didn't see as much shad either. Now, when it was sunny, every now and then you'd pull up on a point and you'd actually see them blow up. You'd see like 1 or 2 fish. But whenever they do that at Fork, there's not 1 or 2 fish. There's 15 or 20. They run in like wolf packs on those points and stuff.
Now, when you say seeing the shadow, you mean like busting on top or like even on your forward facing?
No, it was so shallow where the fish were sitting. Every now and then I would see fish on the live scope sitting up there in like 2 foot of water, 1.5 foot of water. I could never really see the shad. The shad I would see was out behind the boat. But it let me know that there was shad in the area. But there's shad all over Lake Fork. Like the whole thing is gizzard shad. But every now and then you'd see one skip across the top of the water, and if you could land your topwater somewhere near it, there was obviously one chasing it, whether he blew up or not. There was 3 or 4 probably sitting there behind it, chasing it.
Just an extra chance. That's all it is.
It was. Those were gimmies, like in golf.
Yeah. So when I was, granted, like I see when I was at Fork, but like the 2-3 days I was at Fork, I probably almost fell in like 15 times from just destined being on the trolling motor, almost knocking me in with stumps.
Yeah.
But now that it's down so much, because it's 6 feet down?
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it? Has that become more difficult to navigate Lake Fork, or is it still the same?
So this was my 3rd or 4th time there, and I think it was a little easier, honestly, with the lake being lower. Like once you get above the 2nd bridge in the west arm, you can't get out of that channel and run. And I could actually see some lanes, and I would idle them in practice, obviously, because I don't want to rip something off in practice. It's not worth it. Now in the tournament, if I found something in a lane, I'm gonna go for it. But I think it made it a little easier. Now the fishing part was still a pain, and it was really, really bad the first day because the wind was blowing like 40. It was rough, and you're sitting there, and it's a good thing we have spot lock because we could have never fished in that. I have the boat in between 14 pieces of timber on spot lock, and it's not moving. And the trolling motor's coming out of the water half the time.
Oh
So
my
it was
gosh.
pretty scary. I'm like, man, if this thing comes off a spot lock, I'm going right back into that tree. Like there is no stopping it. So I told my marshal, I was like, yeah, you should probably just sit down and not stand up.
Yeah.
Because if we get blown into that thing, one of us is going in, probably both.
Yeah.
Baby shark on a shish kebab.
That's always scared me, landing on top of a stump.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there is navigational buoys that you run buoy to buoy on Fork. If you've never been there, definitely that's what you need to do. They do have boat lane chips. Now, when you run those boat lanes, do not get out of the boat lane, and where it tells you to stop, you stop. Do not keep going.
Have you learned from experience?
Yeah, I have. First year I was there, I took a pretty massive chunk out of the bottom of the boat.
Oof.
Oh gosh.
I went a little past the stop sign and I was sitting it down, and that's when it's the worst. I sat down on top of one, skiing into a pocket. It was pretty hard.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Bone jarring at that point.
My marshal was like, ooh. I was like, yeah, that hurt.
He resonated with you. He was like, I've done that before.
I got back and looked at it on the trailer and I could see wood. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, that's okay.
You start seeing that pink stuff, that's bad.
Yeah. I wonder how the bilge pump worked that day.
It was pretty good. Yeah, it was about every hour. It was pretty steady.
Pumping.
It got its money's worth.
Yep. Good thing I have insurance.
Right.
It would have been very, very expensive.
And good thing it was underwater, so you can say you didn't see it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I didn't see it.
I felt it, but
I saw the other 6 million trees in the lake, just not that one.
That's insane. Well, dude, walk us through your practice, like leading up to day one of practice, kind of what you were looking for, and then kind of your mindset going into day one of competition, if you felt like you had a shot or not.
Not really. I mean, I didn't know. You never know on Fork. The good thing is it's a small lake, and if you kind of know how to run around, you can try a lot of different things in a day. So with the lake being 5.5 feet down, there's no grass, which typically we have grass. I always have an oak crap pattern at Fork, and it's very simple. You pick up a sparrow frog and you go in the grass and you fish. You're going to catch 18 to 25 pounds every time we go, no matter what time of year usually, except for the fall. Fall was not like that. But there's no grass, so that takes that away. The fish probably aren't going to spawn on the bank because there's no cover on the bank. So they're either going to be on trees, they're going to be on shad spawn points, or they're going to be out deep. So I pretty much just stuck with that. I mean, there's really nothing else they can get on in the lake. Now, guys caught them off docks that were in the water. That did play a little bit for a lot of checks, but I kind of figured that wasn't going to be a way to win. I knew it was going to be one somewhere offshore, so I wanted to do both. I wanted to start on some shad spawn stuff and then fish out deep. And I had full intentions of doing that. And in practice, I really only fished like one day. I idled for 2 full days. I never hardly casted at anything. And I knew a lot of shad spawn points and areas where they got from previous years because we'd been there twice when that's going on. I did find one place way up the lake on the west arm that I kind of figured nobody else had found. It was real. I mean, I got lucky finding it, to be honest. And it only produced for one day, but in practice, I made 4 casts. I jumped off a 6, a 5, and I caught 2 over 4. And I was like, well, that gives me a starting hole. And then I got a bunch of deep stuff to run from here down and a couple other shad spawn points. I've caught them in the past. I never even fished them in practice. Didn't know whether they were fished there or not, but I figured it literally only takes you when you're doing that type of deal 2 or 3 casts to know if they're there. I mean, you pull up, they're going to bite because they're in a foot of water.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of especially the first 2 days of the tournament when they hadn't been pummeled.
Right.
So you can kind of figure it out and run a lot of stuff really quick. So that was kind of the game plan, and that place worked out the first day. I caught 23 pounds in like 30 minutes. So I was really fortunate, but I only got 5 bites off of it. Kind of worried me a little bit. And then I was actually idling out of the timber, and for some reason I happened to look back at a point. I did fish this point in practice because it's very hit or miss for whatever reason, but it's close by this other place. I happened to see a shad skip, and I was like, oh boy, I gotta go fish it now. And then as soon as I put the trolling motor down, one blew up. My first cast, I bomb up there with a cane walker, and I jump off like a 7.5 pounder. I'm like, oh, that sucks. Throw back up there, catch a 5 something. Then they won't bite the top water. Like I said, I had to alternate baits really, really fast. Pick up a square bill. I throw it up there. I catch a double. Catch 2 4/8s. And then after that, it was done.
You probably thought that was a teener when you first set the hook.
Yeah, it was. Well, the first big one, it is known for like big fish on that place. Me and Cobb have both fished it in the past. But yeah, when that thing locked up, it jumped. The first one jumped by itself, and I was like, oh, it's not that big. It's like 4 pounder. And then all of a sudden, it got real heavy. And I looked at my Marshall. I said, do I have 2 now? Because I can't move this thing. Like, he's not in a tree. There's no trees up here on this one. And all of a sudden, they came up, and somehow they jumped in unison together, like 3 feet out of the water. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 2. So they're identical.
So they both jumped, and you got them both to the boat?
I landed both of them. That's what I told him. I said, for sure, I'm going to lose one of these, if not both, because they're just going nuts.
Should have played the damn lottery.
That's what he said. He said, you might have just lost a 7 pounder, but you just caught 2 4.5s that jump like 5 times. I was like, I'm not even. I mean, you're going to lose them on treble hooks. Those things, they are the hardest fighting largemouth I've ever caught on fork.
That's crazy.
I think it's because they've been caught a lot and they know how to fight.
Yeah,
it's they're like this again.
Some saltwater genetics in them. They're there to eat.
Wild.
Yeah.
I mean, that 8.5 pounder I caught the last day jumped like 3 times. Like an 8.5 pounder should not be getting full airborne.
No.
And it did.
No, I think it was a clip of Polnick. He had like a 7, and it jumped like a smallmouth, like 3 foot clear out of the water. And I was like, I've only hooked into a handful over 6.5 in my life, and all of them cannot jump. Like, they can't get their bodies out of the water.
No, Lake Fork is something different.
Yeah,
those fish are built different.
Something in the water.
I wonder if it's because of how many gizzard shad are there and how quick the gizzard shad is that they've just developed like super genetics to chase them down, and they have more power than normal.
I think that has something to do with it, and the way the Texas Parks and Wildlife people there, I wish every state did what they do. It's incredible. Like, they want bass fishermen to thrive in their state. So those fish they're pretty much genetically built, a lot of them. I mean, they're built from the biggest, baddest fish in the lake. They take them out of the lake, they spawn them, and they put them back in the lake. So
incredible.
Smart.
So sick.
That's why that lake stayed, and the slot limit. I mean, there was a big fish tournament the first day of our practice. And I tell people there's a lot of people that fish Lake Fork. But when you go out during a big fish tournament, there was 1,007 entries. Not boats, but entries. So there was probably 300 to 400 boats on Lake Fork that day.
Holy
And
crap.
it is only...
How'd you get a parking spot?
Yeah, it was pretty hard. There is a lot of boat ramps on Fork. So, but I mean, over the weekend, 1,000 people would fish that lake, and I'd pull up somewhere like I've never been, and just trying to get out of those guys' way, just because I don't want to fish in front of them, even though I'm practicing for a tournament myself. I got 2 more days to figure out a small lake like that, and I'd get bit, and I'm like, I know these fish have been fished for. And it's incredible. They just keep biting.
That's insane.
They're hungry because they put out so much energy chasing big shad around.
They probably do. That's what I think the lake being down really helped too.
Less water to look for.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many acres it took out of the lake, but it's not very big to begin with. You take 5.5 feet out of a small lake like that.
Well, it's going to shrink it by at least a quarter, I would think, because you're losing so much water mass.
Yep.
I mean, 5.5 feet is a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. That's insane. Were you so The top water. Were you throwing the 110 or the bigger one, the 130?
No, I was throwing the 110. It matched the shad perfect.
Like size-wise and everything?
Yep.
Was that like a 5 1/4 inch bait? Probably. I don't know much about the cane walker, so I'm.
I think it's like a 4.5.
Yeah, I think the 110's like a 4 something, and the big one's a 5 something.
Got it.
So then, kind of walk us through the tournament. Like you said, you had a really good start to day one, and obviously you had your biggest bag on the last day. But were there any adjustments you made? Obviously, the last day had different weather conditions, but what kind of adjustments did you make throughout the tournament?
So the first 2 days, I mean, it was pretty much I could power fish, move around. After the shad spawn deal, I could pull up on shad spawn points that I've found in the past, especially down by the dam in the really clear water. Because the lake changes a lot in 6 miles, water clarity wise. It was very, very dirty where I was fishing up the lake, which I was surprised they bit a cane walker. That first day, I had full intentions of catching them on a square bill. And I made a couple casts up there. I had one slap at the bait, didn't eat it. And like I said, all of a sudden a shad came skipping across the top, and I was like, well, I got the cane walker laying there. And I caught all my fish pretty much on the cane walker. But towards the end of that first day, I was just kind of bouncing my way down towards the lower end. Because on one shad spawn point I fished in the past, I trolled up there just to look the last day of practice, and I saw 2 wolf packs of fish that swam by. That the first one, probably, if y'all would have caught all 5, would have gone 28 pounds. The second one would have been way over 30. I was like, well, I need to fish this. Yeah. They're hard to catch, though, because it's like I said, super clear water, and you don't get very many shots at them because they do. I could watch them swim up on the point and swim right back out in the timber. Swim up on the point, swim back out in the timber. So they're moving really fast. So I just would go down there, and I was like, well, I'll fish around and fish some of these stumps. They're out of the water stumps, most of them, but they still created some shade. And they still had a big root system on the bottom where those fish could sit if any of them did decide to quit moving around. So I caught 2 of my bigger fish the first and the second day, late in the day on that cane walker around stumps. I think I caught a 6.3 the first day, like a 5.10 or something the second day.
Dang.
So it was pretty much all top water. Second day especially was all top water.
Can't argue that.
No, I caught the first 2 days. I probably caught 25 keepers. I know the first day I caught 20 pounds twice. Second day I got.
There's people that had like 15 pounds that are just punching the air right now listening to this.
Well, I know, like, all I had to do was throw a top water on points. Like, and that's kind of what, I mean, I kind of learned it during the tournament. It wasn't like I found that in practice and was like, well, this is what I'm going to do the whole time. But I had one, again, late in the day, I caught a 6-pounder. And I got very fortunate on that one. I bombed up on this point, and I had one blow up, miss it, ate it. And it was a 3-pounder, and I'm fighting it all the way to the boat. It's not going to help. It jumps like 5 feet from the boat. My cane walker lands, and I'm about to reel it in because I'm like, crap, that sucks. I jumped him off, but he's not going to help anyway. So I'm trying to make another cast up there so I keep the school fired up because most of the time they would sit. Well, for whatever reason, these all chased it out. As soon as my cane walker hit the water, 6-pounder ate it like 3 feet away from me. Had an 8-pounder trying to get it out of its mouth.
No way.
I was like, now that's lucky. That's when
crazy.
things are going your way. But
yeah, that's like the clip Bass always shows of Jamie Hartman at Gunnersville.
Yeah.
He had the 5 on and then lost it and then a 6 ate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much the same deal.
You're probably trying to get it out of the.
To me.
Yeah,
to be honest, like
I was trying to reel it in to make another cast so I could catch one. Like, I can't believe she got it. It looked like a shark coming to get it.
You're probably trying to yank it out of its mouth so that the 8 would eat it.
No, I was happy with that one.
Yeah.
They look. I knew it was like a 5 or something. I was like, oh, that's gonna help.
So basically, what you're saying, Shane, just real fast, I apologize, is if you go to Lake Fork and you have a largemouth eat it and you lose them, just open your bail and let the bait rest because another one's gonna smoke.
Blind that sucker.
Yeah, because it's funny, like, to put in relative terms here, like guiding for smallmouth on Lake Erie, when a client will hook them and lose them instantly, I'm like, just open your bail and drop it because there's always like 4 chasing. And I can't tell you how many times as soon as they close that bail, they're like, "Oh, I got one." I'm like, "Yeah, because they're small now."
Yeah. That's how those sport fish are there. It's not usually just one fish. It's a lot that you can't see.
Yeah, Andy, that's so true. Like we've talked about it a bunch of times, but like when I drew Chris Johnson in the Open in Ontario, and he realized that he made the mistake of leaving his graph on, so I was dropping on fish from the back. But when he turned it off, like every time he'd catch one is when I dropped down. So that's when he was like teasing me. He's like, "Huh,
he
smart
told me about
that." Did you really?
Yes, he did.
That's hilarious.
He has told me that story.
Oh, that's amazing.
Smart
he's a good buddy of mine.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that was like the second fish he realized, because every time he'd hook up, I'd reel back in fast and just drop and wait.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Huh, smart co-angler."
Quit doing that. You're catching
Oh no. This is gonna be a fun but a really long day.
That's right. What he thought. Oh, that's funny. Well, so going into here's my question I'm really intrigued about. So going into the last day, so obviously 3 days for the majority of the time were relatively consistent in terms of conditions. Wind blowing, obviously majority of sun. But when you wake up day 4 and realize that you're not going to have sun, I mean, did you think to change anything up, or are you just going to run the same game plan and then obviously change on the fly if needed?
Yeah, well, actually, really the third day it changed to pretty cloudy. And I noticed a big difference. I went to a place I hadn't started yet, but I went there about midday the second day, and there was a ton of fish on it. Like I got a bite for 15 casts in a row on that cane walker, and I was like, I'm gonna start there. Well, first cast I get a bite, catch like a 3-something. Second cast I get a bite, catch 3-something. I make like 5 casts in a row, don't catch one. I'm like, huh. I was like, well, I know they're still up there somewhere. They got to be. And I picked up the worm, and I caught another 3 or 4 on the worm, and I caught one good one, like a 4.5 probably. And then they quit biting again, and I rotated through some baits, caught a couple little ones, and at that point I figured it was over. They weren't going to bite again, because they get used to throwing in there and catching their buddies and reeling them back in. Like I said, they're only 1.5 2 foot deep.
Right.
So then I run up to I had a shell bed that actually had some brim on it, plus a shad spawn going on it. It was like a trifecta.
Jackpot.
Yeah. And I got 3 bites off of it in a row on a square bill. I threw up there the first cast. I hook like a 6. I jump it off. I'm like, well, that sucks. Sit down, put on brand new treble hooks. Throw back up there. Lose one I never see because it whooped my butt. Throw back up there again. Lose another giant. I'm like, man, what in the world have I done to piss off the fish gods? I've lost 3 that probably would have went minimum 18, probably over 20. And then I picked up a worm on that spot later in the day, and that play saved my day because I caught a 6 and a 4.5 late. So that's kind of when I figured, you know what, maybe I need to be picking up this big worm on day 4 and dragging it around to get some bigger bites, because everything I caught on the worm was actually pretty big, and that's been the opposite in years past. I know when Brandon won in 2019, and I was running the shad spawn stuff too, and if you picked up a worm and threw it up there, you were going to catch like a 14 to 15 incher every time. So this year was the opposite. Yeah, I don't know if it was a little later in the year, a little hotter, which it could have been because the water temps were around 80 degrees. So the 4th day, I pull up on that same place again. I get a topwater bite my first cast. It's a little bitty guy, like a 2-pounder. Make like 3 or 4 more casts and never get another bite on it. And that's when I picked up the worm, and I think I caught a 3-something, heavy 3, and then I caught that 7.5. I was like, well, I need to implement this a little more. So I run up to my shell bed. I have like 4 or 5 bite it. I don't know if I kind of hurt them the first 3 days of the tournament, but they would just bite it and not eat it. Then I'd have some brim peck at it, and I'm like, well, there must not be that many bass up there if I've got brim for the first time in 3 days pecking at it. And then I was struggling a little bit, ran back to that place, caught a couple more. And then late in the day, I was like, I'm going to flip some trees and see if they've gotten around some kind of hard cover, because they weren't up on those points as good as they were the first 3 days. So I just kind of picked the tree line outside of those shad spawn points, and that's when I started catching some. Now, the big one I got pretty fortunate on, I was actually turning the boat, and on live scope, I saw a tree that had fallen over, and it was the only tree on the point laying flat, and I saw one big blob on it, and I made a cast right on top of her, and my worm was sinking, and I saw her shoot up, and my line just like slack on the water. I was like, oh man, that's
awesome.
got to be a big one. And eight foot of water with a 3.5 or a 3/8 ounce weight. So that worm's falling pretty quick.
Holy crap.
And she caught it at about 4 feet deep. So I must have placed it perfectly right in front of her face to where she could see it.
Right in that vision. She was like, oof.
Yeah. She must have been looking up, but she was like 8.5 foot deep. That was the deepest I caught one up to that point. Like I said, I planned on fishing deep. And mixing it up. And I did fish a little bit offshore. I think I only caught one fish that was like a 3.5 the second day, and it didn't help me offshore. I just never really had to go do it. And there were so many other guys doing it that I like to try to fish away from everybody. And that hurts me a lot in my career. It does, because I mean, we all find a lot of the same places. And this one, it just kind of worked out where I didn't have to go fish around all the big crowds and stuff.
Yeah, I hear that. I tell Andy all the time that I hate fishing around people. I don't want to see people fishing. I don't want to see anybody. But was that your 8-pounder that you caught?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's so
off
awesome.
Live scope. Yeah.
When that line went slack, you probably had like a mixture of like heart drop, but also cracker.
I did the old man, like I'm gonna sneak up on her, like slow reeled into her and then cracked her. And as soon as I did, it was like a tarpon just 100 miles an hour to the surface.
She was not happy with that worm.
No.
It bit me back.
Yeah. Dude, those things, I'm telling you, they're the hardest fighting largemouth I've ever caught.
That's crazy. And I think I cut you off. Were you gonna say something?
Oh, I don't even remember what I was going to say, so it probably was irrelevant.
The
whole tarpon coming up, it's kind of like phased you a little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, when I saw, I mean, maybe Andy too, but I saw it out there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I thought it was like a 7-something. It's like I've got another 7-pounder.
Yeah.
And I had like
surprise then.
I had like 4 or 5 trees. So I kicked the trolling motor on 100. I'm trying to fight her around trees, and for whatever reason, she just swims right perfect between them.
Of course.
Yeah, it's like,
of course.
That never happens.
No.
When it's your time, it's your time. Absolutely not.
That's right. Yeah. Oh man. So I mean, this has got to be kind of a good confidence boost for you going into the rest of the season. You know, obviously, one, it's pretty cool getting the Century belt, but get a nice top 5 finish going into Pickwick. I mean, it's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, it does, because for lack of a better word, I have been sucking this year. For my standards especially. Usually I'm a very consistent angler. I finished a lot in the 20s, I would say. And I was in 68th in points after the first however many tournaments we've had. 4. That's the worst start I've ever had in my career in 11 years. So I was not very happy after the first 4 tournaments. I'm very hard on myself.
I mean, but it's good to be. While some people will you have like your family members that be like, oh, don't be so hard on yourself, right? But like in reality, I think it's a good trait to have, because when you set higher expectations, even if you don't reach them, you still, you land in a good spectrum. But not to dive too deep into it, but like, do you think there's anything that's attributed to the slow start to the season?
Honestly, a lot of lost fish.
Luck.
Shit luck, a lot of lost fish. St. John's, I beat myself this year before I got there. I dislike the St. John's for whatever reason. Just doesn't fit what I like to do. Santee was good. I lost a couple big fish where I would have finished easily inside the top 20s. And I found the same fish that Drew Cook did. He beat me there. And then after the first day, I gave him the respect that I wasn't going to go in there because I was an earlier boat number. I don't do that. So,
respect.
I kind of tried. Yeah, I kind of tried to find other things, and I should have stayed in that same creek because John Cox and Corey Johnston stayed in there, fishing different. Fishing different areas. Not exactly where Drew was, but I should have. I just saw the second day of that tournament. I ran around and literally, like we were just talking about, I watched somebody catch a big one every time I sat the boat down. So mentally, it was like, I watched Clifford Perch catch. Like I ran to a fish that I found the first day of the tournament, and it was only like a 3.5 pounder. Well, I watch him catch it. I'm like, okay, well, I'll go somewhere else. All of a sudden, he stands back up, starts flipping. I was like, wait a minute, there wasn't a female there yesterday. He caught an 8.5 pounder off that same bed. And then I ran and I'm going to fish another bed for like a 3.5 pounder, and John Cox is sitting on it, holding up like a 7 pounder. I'm like, man, I got to get out of here. I can't watch this all day. So I finally I left. So I kind of beat myself in that one too. The second and the third day were a lot tougher, but then Chick, I broke them off, lost them, and I was only getting 7 or 8 bites a day, and I landed 4 each day. So,
dang. Well, here's to turning that around for the rest of the season.
That's what I told Mercer. I told him, I said, I'm starting my season right now. I was like, I'm already in the hole. It doesn't really matter. Got to forget about all that stuff that's happened because it's only going to hurt you if you keep thinking about it.
Tend to be free and have some fun.
This is the most mental sport I think there is, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's if you could be pretty decent, golf too. If you could be pretty decent at fishing, but you can like really hone in and nail that mental side, you don't have to be the most talented fisherman to win tournaments.
No, you don't. You have to be. My buddy used to play high school baseball and college baseball, and his college coach said you got to be a little confident.
And
I like that a lot.
Well, okay, I don't know what the hell that means. So can you expand on that?
A little bit of cocky and a little bit of confident.
Oh, see, I didn't pick up on that.
You got to be a little confident. That's what he used to say. So, and I like that a lot. Like I said, I'm very hard on myself. I beat myself up more than I should, but I expect a lot of myself.
That's something good to have, though. But yeah, I mean, I've said it a few times on here, but like Brandon Polnick's show that he did for the St. John's River, it still sticks with me. Is you're not losing, you're learning. There's either you win or you learn. You can't dwell on a loss. Like if you look at it as a loss, you can be mad about it for 24 hours, but after that, you got to learn from it and put it in the rear view.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at it from that perspective, you're always winning, because if you're learning, you're still winning because now you know what to do next time.
That's some Miley Cyrus deep shit right there, Andy.
Yeah. Let's not go down the Miley Cyrus train, but sure.
That is one Polnick is so good. I've talked to him a little bit. I've never really talked to him about mental stuff, but I want to, because he sticks out the most in my mind when it comes to that stuff. And I watch all his YouTube videos. He's one of the few that I really watch fishing wise, but I watch him just because I learn stuff. No, I don't want to learn where he's fishing. Even if we go back to that lake, I could care less about that. I don't care where he catches one, but I want to learn that his decision making is, I think, something we can all strive to do. He's very, very smart on the water.
Trust your gut.
Yeah,
always trust your gut, not your head.
He is very, very good at that. He's kind of like Thrift in that aspect.
Yeah.
Thrift has told me tons of times. I fish with him quite a bit around the house because we live close together. And he's told me tons of times, you can make 150 bad decisions doing this in one day. All you got to do is make 5 good ones. It's pretty strong one-liner there, Thrift. From old redneck from Shelby.
Yeah, it's a manageable ratio.
Yeah. Well, and for Thrift, I'm like, maybe I can make like 70 bad ones because I'm gonna fish half of what you do.
That's right.
I'm not gonna run around quite as much as you do.
Yeah, Thrift. I heard a quote about Thrift though. It was like 4 or 5 years ago, and he's like, I think he said something along the lines, he doesn't try to catch the biggest bass in the lake. He just tries to find the most bass in the lake because eventually he'll stumble on the biggest bass.
Yeah. That's the way he approaches it.
Yeah, and
he's trying to catch everyone in the lake.
I'm gonna catch every one of them.
Yep.
My favorite line Thrift has ever said, and I poke fun at some buddies when he said this, but I love it just because it's perfect for how I like to fish. I don't like to see the bank, and he's like, fishing the bank's easy. He goes, I'm gonna go find all the fish offshore, and if I can't find them there, then I can go figure them out on the bank.
Hold on here 1 second. How many people now that have electronics know how to catch fish offshore, and how many people are actually starting to flock back to the bank just because of like that opposite effect? Offshore fishing is now becoming too easy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll totally agree with that too. I just thought it was funny because that's one thing I do every. I mean, not much anymore, but being that the kayak you can only go 3 miles for freaking hour.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of an interesting concept. But how many people now have 5 graphs on their boat and don't know how to use a single one of them?
A lot.
That's also true.
A lot.
Yeah, you still have to invest the time in learning that stuff.
That's for sure.
Money can buy it, but
yeah,
can't teach you how to use them.
That's right. Well, that's a great segue to one thing I wanted to ask you about, Shane, is, you see you doing a lot of different stuff. And it seems like what I've been picking up from your practice strategy is that you have no problem going into a tournament day without much, in your belt. Like you seem to fish pretty free.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty dangerous trait, like in a good way. But as an angler, I'm kind of curious, do you like to be on the bank? Do you like to be offshore? Do you like to have a bait cast in your hand, spinning around? Like, what's your confidence? What do you want to be known as?
Yeah, I've always thought like I wanted to be a power fisherman, and I do. I mean, if I could catch every bass in the lake on a brown jig with 20-pound line, that's how I would do it.
Fun.
But if I can slack line every one of them, oh yeah, I'm all in. I don't want to pick up the 6-pound test. Now, when we go for smallmouth though, oh yeah, I'll catch them all on a drop shot. But I don't want to have to go catch a largemouth or a spot on a drop shot if I don't have to.
But yeah, tell you what though. Oh, I apologize, Shane. I was going to say catching a smallmouth on a big jig and 20-pound test. It's kind of fun.
I'm sure
too.
Yeah, I have done that a couple times. It is pretty fun. Champlain, I've done it a few times.
Yeah, but that is a lot of fun, especially when they eat the big baits. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
They're always 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
After they bite.
Yeah. But I mean, it sounds like you obviously have your preference, but you're not afraid to conform to what needs to be done.
No, I want to go catch fish. Like I want to have fun doing this. And sometimes, it's not as much fun as others. You're going to fish for 6 or 7 bites, and that's just kind of what you have to do. I'm not afraid to lay up. It's a financially tough thing to do. So if I know I cannot win, I'm not afraid to go chase 10 grand and finish 30th in the points. So I make sure I don't finish 90th and take myself out of making the classic, because you can't win the classic if you're not there.
That's right.
So I'm not afraid to go finish 30th. Like maybe I do it too much. That's probably why I haven't won an elite event yet. And this year I've taken a lot more chances. And I'm going to continue doing it now, especially after I moved up 28 places in the points, which I can't believe. But I do want to make the classic. That's always my first goal every year. Make the classic.
Yeah.
Because that's a life-changing event if you do win it. Winning an Elite Series regular season event, probably not going to change your life. It's going to change your life for a couple years. But you win a classic, if you do it right, it has the potential to change your life for good. Like you're a professional fisherman for the rest of your life, and you're getting paid to do it.
That's right.
So,
I
fish pretty free. I'll do anything. Yeah. Whatever they want to bite, that's what I'll do.
Well, and I think there's a big point to say there too about consistency. Like, if you're consistent, you are going to have your shots to win from time to time, and you're paying the bills at home, so you don't have to worry about that. So you can easily fish free most of the time because you're going to be able to make do at home and be able to survive what you're doing.
Yeah, it is, and I'm not afraid to have a bad practice either and just go fish conditions. Like
Yeah.
Think guys get hung up sometimes in what they did in practice, and they're too afraid to, or they wait too long to change and go do something to catch 5, maybe for only 15 pounds and be in 35th place, but at least you didn't zero. Like, that sucks. I've done that.
Right.
I zeroed at Chickamauga and the first day, and at Fork last year in the fall, the first day. I went from like 8th in the points all the way to 40th. I barely made the classic, so
Oof.
I know what that's like. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, you weren't the only one that zeroed at those events.
No, they were terrible.
No,
they were just tough. I mean, in general, it's fall fishing. Fall is always tough about everywhere in the country. Maybe not up north, but the rest of the country in the south, it gets pretty tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say, except for the north, we can't wait for the weather to like change. We're like, it's game time.
Yeah, because they're all about to eat for the winter. See, our fish feed in the winter because we still got water. We don't have ice.
Yeah, it's like after like once like smallmouth start spawning, like mid June to like the third week of July, it becomes really good to like flip grass for largemouth once the smallmouth are done spawning, and then basically from then till like you're just waiting for the calendar to flip and hit November. So I mean, a little bit of October could be fun, but once November there, it's bonkers. Yeah.
I want to go up and do that one time.
Well, you are more than welcome, buddy. Come on up.
Yeah, it's we live in a pretty great place. Like first week of I could go back like the third week of September through middle of December, depending on like how much snow and ice we get. It's just silly. As soon as you get like that first 40-degree night, it's on.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop. Unless you get like 40-mile-an-hour winds for 5 days straight, which happens a lot on the Great Lakes.
Yeah, it does. It gets a little scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
You won't catch me out there in that.
No, you do not. But so, dude, we have unless Andy's got something else for you, we have one last question for you. But before we do, I'm actually pretty intrigued. Is Oahe going to be your first time there?
It is. Yeah.
What are your feelings going into that one?
I heard it's really good. It's got smallmouth, so I'm all in. I like catching smallmouth. For whatever reason, usually when we go to smallmouth events, it feels like a vacation to me, not a tournament. Like I know they're going to bite somewhere.
Fun, right?
Yeah, they're going to bite some. The only thing I don't like about it, like when we go to Champlain or St. Lawrence, if you catch 17 pounds a day, you kind of suck. You may not make a check.
Just real quick, how crazy does that sound to catch 17 pounds a day and to be like 65th and suck?
Yeah. But now if you catch 17.6 a day, you might be in 29th.
Yeah.
That's what I don't like about it. That's the only downfall about going to those places.
Dang cookie cutters. Yeah.
Yep.
All those 3.5-pound rats that you're just like crap.
Exactly. That's like Fork and up north. You're like, man, it's a 3.5-pounder. It's not that great.
Yeah.
It was fun for a second, but now that I got them in, I'm not that excited.
Yeah, that resonates like solely with me on guide trips because the clients are like, "Yeah, that's a 3.5-pounder, 4-pounder." I'm like, "Oh, whatever."
Let's catch a bigger one.
Yeah, like we'll have a lot more opportunities to catch some giants. Like, don't even worry about that fish. Let's not get a photo.
Yeah, but also as a guide, you're like,
yeah.
As a guide, you're like, as long as they're happy, you're happy.
But like. It's so hard to like switch into that mentality some days because you know what lives there and you know what you can catch. Like last year we put on Erie alone on guide trips, I think we put like 150 over 5 in the boat. And I'm like, this is a great year. Like, and this year I'm like, oh, it's a 4-pounder. It's a 4-pounder.
Shane's sitting here like, tell me where that hole's at when I come up.
Buffalo. I'm just throwing it out there. It's fun. When it's on, it's fun.
Oh, yeah. Well, Andy, you got anything left for Shane?
No, I think it's time to him with the last question.
Cool. All right, so Shane, we have one last question. It's for everybody that's new to the show. And that is, if you could choose 3 different individuals to sit down, have a beer and a nice steak, and pick their brain, who would you invite and why? They don't have to be fishing related, and they could be alive 1,000 years ago or today. It doesn't matter.
Man, you really put me on the spot.
Oh, yeah. We don't give anybody a prep for this because it really just puts you in the moment for it.
The facial expressions.
I'll go one for fishing, and I already said it. Polnick.
Heck yeah.
I will go. It's probably gonna be all sports related because that's all I really watch. Actually, I'll go with a weird one. You know, I play a lot of video games. I would like to with Tim the Tap Man at a Dallas Cowboys game. Y'all can look him up on YouTube.
I know you're talking about.
Yeah, he's from up here. Gamer. Is he? Well, now he lives in Syracuse, Florida.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's like his 5th house now or something. What I'm getting at is I should have played video games for a living. I'm just kidding. I think he's a multi-millionaire now, but I think that'd be pretty cool. And then I'm gonna go Tiger Woods. That'd be pretty cool.
Why?
I like golf.
Tiger?
I like
From
golf
the golf aspect or like a mentality aspect?
Both.
Both.
Yeah. Yeah, like
that would be pretty gnarly.
New Tiger.
Oh, new Tiger?
Like, I mean, not like when he was like 23, like coming into golf.
Oh, so like
when he won everything.
When he won everything. Yeah. I want to know. And maybe like we can throw John Daly in there with us.
Dude, John Daly and some beers. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Me and Tiger may not get a beer, actually.
Yeah.
John may take them all.
That's right. I'm just trying to think of this dynamic because, like, you got yourself, Tiger, and Polnick, and you're having like some legit like mentality, strategic conversation. And John Daly in the back just getting hammered, like having a great time,
ripping on cigs and slamming 30 packs.
Just another day for John Daly, hitting bombs, crushing beers.
Love it.
Well, dude, thank you for taking the time out of your night tonight, especially when you just got home from banging the boat around Fork. So we appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully get you back on here real soon.
Absolutely, anytime, guys.
Heck yeah, we appreciate you taking time, buddy. We'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
All right, Shane. We'll see you.
All right, see you. You too.
I'm still thinking about that dynamic of just like John Daly, and you have like some serious conversations going on, and you're just like, yeah. Either way, but dude, we gotta get down to Texas for a trip at some point.
I agree, but real fast, like, could you imagine a party with John Daly and Kenny Powers, both wearing some Pit Vipers, like mullets, 30-pack, just having some fun, like wild.
Sign me up.
The stories.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you'll remember the stories by the end of the night, but you'll have a great time. That's for dang sure.
They'll remember the stories. We shall not.
No, yeah, that's right.
Right. Oh, man.
But, I mean, we could probably tell the folks. I mean, it's not like it's we're trying to keep it a secret or anything, but we're trying to plan a trip eventually, you, Deacon, and I, at some point. It would be really, obviously, Texas is up there. We have a couple different places we're talking about doing, but we're thinking about doing a whole video series on it. So if you guys want to see that on the Serious Angler YouTube channel, let us know, because we have some title ideas to series that we want to film, because there's one thing in common out of the three of us that we've never caught, and I think Texas would be a really good place to try and do that, and that would be a heck of a lot of fun. But we got a bunch of different places. Like, I love to go to Lanier, like when it's prime time, and catch some magnum spotted bass. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure Lanier will be an easy one to do. Fork probably could be an easy one, but like Texas, I don't want to go to like the big.
I don't want to go to Fork. I don't want to go to Fork.
I want to go to like the little lakes that
I want to go back to. Yeah, I want to go back to Possum Kingdom.
Yeah, like these little lakes that nobody talks about, where they just pump out like 8 to 10 pounders and they're hush hush. Like, those are the lakes I want to go to. There's a couple in Tennessee that are that way as well. Like, that's what I want to do,
dude. That's one of my biggest regret of fishing that Bass Kayak Championship last year and finding that massive school on a ledge and catching 12 pounds for 2 casts and moving on. And then the whole thing goes to mud and those fish are gone. My biggest regret is not fishing that school and just beating them up.
Yeah.
That place has so much potential, especially like if you like to throw a glide bait, the amount of big fish you will catch there.
I bet like an 8-inch paddle tail, like on a
you
heavy
could catch
jig,
them on everything, dude. Like you could catch them on, just topwater walking baits, frogging, punching, flipping, throwing a big swim bait on ledges, dragging a big worm. Yeah. And there's big stripers. I caught like a 12-pound striper on a big worm that I was dragging through a brush pile and thought it was a 10-pounder.
Yeah, dude, that would be a fun video series. Serious anglers go striper fishing. Like,
I don't know why. This is my brain.
It'd be so much fun.
I could do it for topwater, but I can only do it for a day because then I'm like, hey, what are the largemouth doing?
Yeah, fair enough.
Like, this is what I tell you. Like, if I ever go steelhead fishing with you, I can only do it for one day or maybe only a couple hours because my brain will instantly think bass.
Oh, dude, like, it's crazy to think about that. Like, when I go in those creeks, I'm like, all right, if it was springtime, a bass would be here. I wonder if there's any crayfish around. Are there any bait? Like, my mind instantly, like, even when I'm steelhead fishing, I try to incorporate bass thoughts into how the fish position, because when they get in the current, they do exactly the same thing.
Yes, exactly. But to take that to a new level, like my brain is this bad. I'll be driving down the road and just see random rock piles on the side of the road, be like, I'd crank that, and like putting that in. Like that's, or like, oh dude, I remember vividly a couple years ago, I was walking on public land. I was bow hunting. I was trying to get back to my truck after the day. And I walked past a piece of grass and I stop and look at it and examine it for a second, thinking that it looks like milfoil. That's just how my brain works.
You're gone, dude. You're gone.
When I say obsessed, I mean I'm obsessed.
Obsessed. Yeah. You're gone. You're not obsessed. You're gone.
Gone. Yeah.
You're poisoned. You're poisoned.
Well, dude, coming up, obviously I'll be traveling a bunch. I mean, this next, in 2 months is going to be insane.
Yeah.
Through July. But I mean, what's coming up for you? What any openings for people trying to go catch some big old smallmouth, or maybe even come up and fish one of the inland lakes for largemouth with you?
Yeah. So next week this weekend I didn't book anything this weekend because I try to spend like major holidays with the family. So this weekend I'm actually building a deck with a pergola. So that'll be fun. Saturday and Sunday, a pergola, like this beautiful, like I'll send you pictures when it's
done. I was gonna say I have no idea what that is.
But I'm building with my dad a 20 by 13 foot deck in our backyard, and we're building like a semi-enclosed space and putting like bistro lights and patio furniture up and stuff. So that's gonna be fun. Monday guide trip. Tuesday and Thursday next week I am open, but after that, like I think I have like 2 to 3 days open in the entire month of June that I am able to book. Have some filming projects coming up in June as well for a couple companies that I personally work with, and Bailey has some stuff from one of them as well. And then they look so good. Which semi-breaking news.
Should I put them on here?
Yeah, they're announced. Prototypes are done, and they are bringing them to market shortly. So
should I go grab one?
And you could bring one out. That's fine. And it's probably going to replace a very similar swim bait that we all know. And the kick on it is
that I know and love.
Yes, insane.
I'll be right back. Give me 10 seconds.
So we're going to be doing some stuff with that. July, I have 2 really big tournaments that I'm fishing as of now, if I ever get the time to sign up for them. And then July and August are actually filling really quick for guide trips. September, I think I only have like 1 or 2 weekends left to book, and trying to squeeze tournaments in there because I'm really starting to get the tournament itch back. Like, I'm like, man, I need to go out and fish some derbies. So, yeah. Is that the 6 or the 8-inch?
The 8.
Oh, yeah, it's a monster. Yeah,
we can't really call this a monster. Like,
for me, it's a big bait. Like,
an 8's a big bait, but like, I mean, I guess big for us Northerners, but I mean, for where we're talking with Shane, it's not that big of a bait. But I mean, Cool little body structure. Let me see if I can get it to actually focus.
Well, here's the biggest difference with it is that they have an extremely durable body, but the way the tail is designed, it's like an upside down heart. So it thumps so hard. You can feel the little 3 and 4 inchers. I can feel it on like a medium action bait caster. I can feel it thump. But just something you don't get out of a lot of like soft plastic swim baits. If you're really in tune with your gear and your line and the proper reel, if you know exactly what that bait is doing, you can tell the subtle difference. Because sometimes fish on a swim bait will eat it and spit it out before you ever even know it. So,
especially if you're creeping it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
So it's
well, excited to hopefully film some content with that thing.
Yeah.
That's gonna be pretty sweet.
I gotta find time to get out there and mess around with it. Like, I feel like I haven't been in water shallower than 30 foot in 2 weeks. So
that'll do it.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard to leave those fish just because it seems like I have a ton there and more coming back to me. So like, to explain it, this year on Erie has been an extremely weird year. So it was really cold, then it got warm, and then it got really cold again, and then super hot, and then cold, and now it's like mild. So the fish didn't know what to do. We had fish spawn, in my opinion, super early in the main lake, which they're usually like the last fish to spawn. So we already have a huge population of post-spawn fish. And don't get me wrong, we get a lot of post-spawn fish this time of year. But to see them setting up the way they're setting up, it's normally a first week of June thing for me. When they get funky, and they're getting there now, which is, for the spring we had, I wouldn't expect it to be a week early. But it seems like it's a week early.
It does seem really early because I've been looking at my year-to-date type of deals, and it's way earlier than like previous years.
Yeah, so like we have the first wave of spawners usually is like a big wave, and then it tails off, and then our third wave is the biggest, like second, third week of June in that frame. But like it almost seems like we had a big first wave and they were on and off the bed in like 2 days. So I went up shallow today around 12:30 at the end of my guide trip just to look to see, and I probably saw 35 empty beds but 5 with fish on them. Now, like the first wave was done in 4 days, 5 days, and all that's on them now are like 1.5 pound males.
Wow.
And I'm just like, whoa, that is interesting.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's because of the east wind. We had a lot of east wind for like 15 days, and it was like 90 degrees. So virtually it probably made the shallows way warmer than we thought they got. And they just got up there, dumped their eggs, and left.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Every year's different. Mother Nature's a beast. You have no rhyme and reason with it, especially on the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
So
tricky.
It's fishing.
Yeah. Well, dude, you probably have some new content coming out on your channel as well, right? Because you've been getting your filming system dialed.
Yeah, I've been filming. It's just time to upload it and edit it, which
hard to do.
Yeah, it's time. So maybe in the next couple of days you might see a new video up of like flipping some shallow fish or something. I don't know. I got some smallmouth stuff too from with Jeff out on the lake yesterday. Fun fishing around. So there's some stuff out there. I just have to get it uploaded and figure out how I want to fit it in.
Yeah. Well, if folks want to tune into that, Andy and I's personal YouTube channels are down below in the show description, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on MP3, which if you are listening on MP3, still, currently in this episode, 1, thank you for listening through the entirety of this episode. But 2, if you can, if you have not already, please give us a rating or review, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple, whichever application you are tuning in from. But Andy, I think without further ado, let's wrap this shindig up. And we will see folks on Friday with another Bassmaster Elite Series Pro. We're going to get Joshua Strassner on. who's also in the top 10 at Lake Fork, who we have not had on the show yet. So it's going to be a lot of fun because that dude's a grinder. Yeah. Absolute grinder.
Grinder's going to grind.
Right. Well, folks, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We will see you guys on Friday.